Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Genesis chapter 22 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Okay, let's dive into this, because we're looking at one of the most intense, profound, and closely studied piece of text in literally all of human history. We're going to walk through this entire chapter together, starting right at verse 1 and going all the way to the very end. And we're going to focus entirely on the simple, plain meaning of the text. This is what we call the pashhat. No hidden codes, no complex mysticism, just the who, the what, the where, and the why of this unbelievable narrative. It's a story that kicks off with a jarring, almost unimaginable command from God, and it takes us on this incredibly heavy physical and emotional journey up a mountain that's going to change the course of the biblical story forever. We aren't skipping any details today. We're going to make sure every single action, every difficult term is clearly understood. So get comfortable and really focus in with me, because this is an absolute masterclass in narrative tension and what it means to have absolute faith.
The chapter kicks off by giving us, the readers, a really crucial piece of behind-the-scenes information right in verse 1. It says, "Sometime later, God tested Abraham." Now, it is absolutely vital to remember here that while we know this is just a test, Abraham doesn't have a clue. To him, this is 100% real. Then, in verse 2, God speaks. And the phrasing here is incredibly deliberate and just so heavy. God says, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." I want you to notice the agonizing buildup in those words. First, your son, then your only son, meaning the unique, irreplaceable son of the covenant, the one through whom all those great promises of a massive nation were supposed to flow. Then God gets specific, Isaac. And finally, just to emphasize it, whom you love. God isn't downplaying the immense value of what he's asking for here. He's actually highlighting it. He's asking Abraham to take the very child that represents all of his future hopes, all of God's previous promises to him, and offer him as a sacrifice. This right here sets the ultimate life or death stakes for everything that follows in the rest of the chapter.
So here's how we're going to tackle our explanation today. First, we'll look at the command to sacrifice. Second, we'll follow the journey to Moriah. Third, the actual binding of Isaac. Fourth, the massive resolution where the Lord will provide. Fifth, we'll look at the final blessing and lineage. And finally, number 6, the lessons from Genesis 22. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the command to sacrifice and God's ultimate test for Abraham. So the text tells us God tested Abraham, asking him to prove his faith not just with words, but through physical action. And strikingly, Abraham responds with absolute silence. There's no argument, no bargaining, just pure action. Now, God tells him to go to the region of Moriah. And we need to pause here because Moriah isn't just a spot in his backyard. It's a specific, designated, distant, mountainous region. What does that mean for the story? It means this sacrifice isn't some fleeting, adrenaline-fueled, spur-of-the-moment decision. Oh no. Abraham actually has to pack up his things, travel, and deeply think about this agonizing command for days while he walks into the unknown. He has to live with this impending reality, step by step. Which brings us perfectly into our second phase, the journey to Moriah, a grueling 3-day travel. Let's break down the exact steps of this journey, because the text is highly specific for a reason. Step 1, early the very next morning, Abraham saddles his own donkey and cuts the wood himself. Think about that for a second. Despite being a wealthy, powerful patriarch with plenty of servants, he does this heavy manual labor with his own 2 hands. It really shows this intense personal focus and dedication to the task. Step 2 is the travel itself. For 3 entire days, Abraham walks with his son toward this mountain. 3 days of silence and anticipation. Finally, step 3, the separation. Abraham turns to his servants and says, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you." Did you catch that? We will come back. His statement of faith here is crystal clear. Even in the face of this terrifying command, he tells the servants that both of them will be returning. And now we reach section 3, the most agonizing part of the entire chapter, the binding of Isaac, as they start their ascent up the mountain. So they start walking up. Abraham actually places the heavy wood for the sacrifice right on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carries the fire and the knife. They are walking together, side by side, completely alone. And then the silence is broken. Isaac asks a heartbreakingly logical question. The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Isaac isn't clueless. He understands exactly how sacrifices work. He looks around, he sees the preparations, he literally feels the wood on his own back, and he realizes that the single most essential component, the animal, is completely missing.
How Abraham responds in verse 8 is one of the most famous, profound statements of faith in the entire biblical text. He answers Isaac smoothly, calmly, saying, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And then the text immediately repeats that chilling, quiet phrase, "And the two of them went on together." Notice what Abraham does and doesn't do here. He doesn't explain the terrifying command to Isaac. He doesn't break down crying. He relies entirely, 100%, on the concept of divine provision. He states it as an absolute matter of fact. God will supply what is needed. Yes, he's deflecting Isaac's immediate question, but he's also stating a massive theological truth that is going to become the central beating heart of this entire event.
So we arrive at the absolute climax in verses 9 and 10. And the suspense that the text builds here is just meticulous. It slows right down, forcing us to watch every single action. They reach the place, Abraham builds an altar, he arranges the wood on it, then he binds his son Isaac. He lays him on the altar right on top of the wood. And finally, verse 10. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. It's terrifying. The text leaves absolutely zero room for doubt here. Abraham wasn't faking it. He wasn't just putting on a show, secretly hoping to be stopped at the last second. He went through every single practical, physical step required to complete the command. He bound the boy, he laid him down, and he lifted the blade. His obedience to God superseded every earthly attachment he had, even the life of his beloved, promised heir. Right at that absolute peak moment of tension, we hit section 4. The Lord will provide.
Look at verse 11. It says, "But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, 'Abraham, Abraham.'" That double call of his name, that shows extreme immediate urgency. "Here I am," Abraham replies. And then the angel delivers the command that reverses everything. "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Boom, the test is over. The internal reality of Abraham's absolute reverence and fear of God has just been fully, undeniably demonstrated through his external actions. And literally the second the test is paused, the provision appears. Verse 13 tells us Abraham looks up and what does he see? A ram, caught by its horns in a thicket. He goes over, he takes that ram, and he sacrifices it as a burnt offering instead of his son. The substitution is complete. The animal takes Isaac's place on the altar. In response to this unbelievable deliverance, Abraham does something that is very characteristic of the patriarchs in Genesis. He names the place to establish a permanent, lasting memorial. Verse 14 says, "So Abraham called that place, 'The Lord will provide.' And to this day it is said, 'On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided.'" He names the location after the exact attribute of God that he just experienced firsthand. Think about it. When Isaac asked where the lamb was, Abraham said God would provide, and God actually did. So from that moment on, that mountain forever carries the identity of God's perfect, timely provision. The immediate crisis is resolved, but the story isn't over. Let's look at section 5, Final Blessing and Lineage.
This section brilliantly illustrates exactly how God responds to unwavering obedience. The angel of the Lord calls down from heaven a second time. But this time, God actually makes an oath, swearing by himself, because of course, there's nothing higher to swear by. Listen to the sheer magnificent scale of these promises in verses 16 through 18. Because Abraham did not withhold his only son, God says, "I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore." The promise of descendants isn't just repeated, it's multiplied exponentially. But wait, there's more. God says, "Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies." This is a massive promise of future military and national security. And finally, "Through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." Abraham's one individual act of obedience just secured a global, generational blessing. The entire world is going to benefit from what just happened on top of Moriah. Right after this, verse 19 tells us Abraham and his servants returned together to Beersheba.
Then, right at the end of the chapter, things take what might seem like a slightly strange turn. But trust me, it's actually incredibly important for the simple chronological flow of the Genesis narrative. Verses 20 through 24 suddenly give us this dense genealogical list of Abraham's brother, Nahor. We're told about the children born to Nahor's wife, Milcah, and his concubine, Rumaha. Milcah bears 8 sons, and right in the middle of this list, in verse 23, the text casually drops a massive detail. It says, "Bethuel became the father of Rebekah." Now, why on earth is this here? Well, think about it. The text just spent 19 intense verses securing the life of Isaac and the massive promise of his future descendants. But Isaac can't have descendants without a wife. So this genealogy acts as the crucial bridge. It introduces Rebekah's family line, setting the stage perfectly for the next generation's story. It shows us that while Abraham was facing the ultimate test over in Canaan, God was simultaneously working behind the scenes, building the family back east that would eventually provide Isaac with his bride.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 6, Lessons from Genesis 22.
So what's the crucial point here? It's that this chapter serves as the ultimate case study in 3 deeply linked concepts: trust, obedience, and provision. Let's look at trust first. Abraham had to fully trust that the exact same God who promised him a mighty nation through Isaac was the same God now asking him to sacrifice Isaac. He trusted that God's character was perfectly consistent, even when God's commands seemed utterly logically contradictory. Second is obedience. Abraham's faith wasn't just some abstract mental exercise, it was highly physical. He actually woke up early, he chopped the wood himself, he walked for 3 long days, and he lifted a real knife. His obedience was total, it was prompt, and it was unquestioning. And third, provision. The text firmly, undeniably establishes that when we walk in strict obedience to what God asks, God himself takes full responsibility for the outcome. He provided the ram. He provided the immense blessing. He literally provided the very future of the nation. The binding of Isaac forces us to look deeply at the text and then, inevitably, to look right in the mirror. Abraham was asked to surrender the thing he loved most in the world, the very thing that represented all his future security. His willingness to actually do so proved his ultimate reverence for the Creator over the created. And it leaves us with a really powerful, lingering question. What are we willing to trust God with when we are faced with our own profound tests? When our security, our deepest hopes, or our strongest attachments are on the line, do we hold on to them tightly with clenched fists? Or do we have the immense faith to lay them on the altar, trusting completely that the Lord will provide? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.